Hello, everybody. Welcome into the DawgNation Happy Hour, poured by Classic City Lager. My name is Brandon Adams. Happy to have former UGA All-American, our DawgNation analyst, John Stinchcomb, with us as well. We knew on this Thursday afternoon we'd be talking about Georgia, Alabama. That is still what we're going to do, and yet the conversation around the game completely different than what we anticipated after the news from Wednesday that Alabama coach Nick Saban has contracted the coronavirus. He, along with Alabama Athletic Director Greg Byrne, announcing they had tested positive. Saban will not coach in the game on Saturday, and we'll get into more about exactly what that means to not coach in this game. But, John, if you don't mind, as I welcome you to the program here, from just kind of a big picture perspective, what is your immediate reaction to the positive test for Saban and the effects that could have on Saturday's game?
Well, I think it's a big deal. I think anytime you lose your leader heading into the week, obviously teams have been talking about facing adversity and being able to rebound and adjust no matter what the situation is. But it's a little bit different when it's Nick Saban. I mean, he is a difference maker, and I think it's just as much mental as what he actually brings to the sideline and their game plan. I think having him as, this dark, fearless leader makes a big difference whether or not he's present and his presence is made on that sideline. And, I think this is a big hit for them.
So when I've talked to former players this week, either a couple like yourself from the Georgia side or a couple on the Alabama side thus far, I've tried to have a very simplistic question because I'm honestly curious about the details of this that someone like me that's not a former coach or player might not understand. Clearly, it seems obvious that Nick Saban is a valuable asset on the Alabama sideline. But on game day in particular, how valuable is he? You said a moment ago that him not being there matters, but I'm not trying to ask an overly simplistic question, but how much does it matter? How much of the leadership that he provides can be replicated by someone like offensive coordinator Steve Sarkisian, who has been a head coach before and will kind of fill the interim role on Saturday or the fill-in role on Saturday. There are other guys, on this Alabama staff that have a lot of experience too. Specifically, what is it on game day in your mind that Nick Saban typically does that now either no one will do or the person that attempts to do this won't do it as well as Saban might have?
Well, I think one is the gravitas that he brings. I think people look to him across the sideline, not just players, but coaches, to see what that tone, that attitude, that approach, what it should be. Now, they're an established staff. Sarkisian has been in the fire before. These players that they count on, most of them have been in big game situations, and at least expect that when you sign a letter of intent to go play for Alabama. So I think there's preparation. They're probably better prepared than other teams might be losing a figure like Nick Saban. With that said, I think when it comes to those momentum swings, when it comes to those big play moments, most of these games are defined by a handful of plays. It may not be Saban, and just like it probably wouldn't be Coach Smart who calls that play, but I think it's how you react to them and how you prepare for them and get yourself in those situations to take advantage of those moments. That's going to be a little bit different for them.
If you don't mind, I want to go through a lot of our comments section today because I think a lot of people still want to talk about this topic. There's a lot of potential offshoots of it, and I think a lot of that's kind of addressed by the questions that come up in the comments section. Let me start with Blind Squirrel Sports here on YouTube, who says, NCAA rules prohibit coaches from communicating via technology 90 minutes prior to the start of the game. And Steve Shaw has explained that via AL.com and other places that window of a game begins 90 minutes prior. That's when it's thought that the officials, the referees, have control of the game, and that extends to 90 minutes at the conclusion of the game as well. And, John, something I have a very strong feeling on, I know that Cecil Hurd, the Tuscaloosa news columnist, was on the Paul Feinbaum show today saying that Alabama is looking at options they may have to give Saban some involvement here. I'm a big believer that if he's not going to be in the stadium, either in the booth or on the sideline, then I don't feel like he should have any contact with anyone who is. The kind of crude analogy I used on DawgNation Daily today is you can't have a cell phone and a blackjack table. There's a reason why when you're in the midst of an important competition, and for that, for some, that blackjack is pretty important competition, that you can't have any access to any extra information that can't be gained by sitting there and watching that. I do think that we're in a modern time in which, whether it be Houston Astros sign stealing or New England Patriots and some of the stuff that Bill Belichick has been alleged to do, trying to gain access to information from another sideline or another dugout that might be attempted to be kept secret by the other team. That's just kind of a part of the modern world that we're in sports. And I do think a coach not in the stadium or not in the booth might just have an easier time of processing that because he's not thinking about the 57 different things that a coach on the sidelines having to think about. So if we're talking about a new territory here where a head coach isn't able to be at a game because he's contracted a contagious virus, I'm sorry, in this case, I have to say rules are rules. I don't think he should have any contact with anyone who's at the stadium.
I'll say this. I think the NCAA and I think the SEC in particular has done a great job of bringing us college football in what arguably could be the safest way possible, given that we're in the middle of a pandemic. So I'm starting with a compliment because here comes the criticism in that this probably shouldn't have been an unsuspected, unforeseen occasion where a coach, specifically a head coach, is not able to be on the sidelines of their players. And given the very reasons that you just brought up, I think it highlights that a protocol probably should have been considered and potentially be in place today to allow for a coach to contribute in ways where we're not concerned about an added advantage. Now, I think it's a disadvantage at this point that they don't have Nick Saban, just like I think it would be a disadvantage for Georgia if we didn't have Kirby Smart on the sideline. Now, if it was or there was some bunker that we could create where the head coach or even a position coach or a play caller could be where they don't have outside information access, or, they're looking around and hearing what are the, pregame hits of, I was talking to the offensive coordinator earlier and they're planning on doing, taking their shots once they get in second down near the 50. Well, that's a advantage any coach would like to hear, much less the information of, we just got a report from the sideline saying that, the star running back's not coming back in the game. Well, most folks don't have access to that in real time. So if there was foresight and they were able to create this environment where a coach could contribute in some way, specifically, I'm thinking about head coaches and play callers in a bunker, just like we have, the half the staff is up from their booth watching the game from, what would it equate to most fans as your club section. They can still see the game from a different vantage point without being on the sidelines, but that's not currently available. So I'm sorry, there's no access right now.
So let me firmly put my tinfoil hat on for this because I'm really about to get into the weeds of why it is that I don't like this. And it's not going to happen because of the rules that are in place. But for me, it's not the extra information that Saban could gain by watching the TV broadcast because, John, as I'm sure you're aware because you've done TV before, but the average fan might not be aware that what you see on TV is about 30 seconds behind what's happening in real time in the stadium. When I'm at a press box, a play happens, it's an exciting play or a controversial play. My immediate move is to look up and look at the regular TV feed in the press box because in real time, I'm going to see the play on television well after it's actually happened in real life. That's just how long it takes the information to travel via satellite. What I'd be more concerned about, though, is that Saban, far removed from the hectic game day environment where there's always a new play to call, always a new situation to consider, that when you're away from the stadium, the only thing that you are able to do is kind of process the information that's coming to you. I'm thinking about still frames being sent to him from either the all-22 angle of the players or something from the Georgia sideline. I'm thinking about all that information that can be more quickly processed away from the stadium because you're not thinking about the game day decisions. And if you have the ability to then communicate to those who are on the sideline, I do think that has the potential of becoming an unfair advantage. I'll take my tinfoil hat off after saying that. Yet that is something I would definitely be on guard with if there was any discussion about relaxing the rules about a coach coaching from outside the stadium venue.
Well, with that said, I mean, he has the option to go up to the coach's booth anytime he so chooses. Mm-hmm. Just head coaches would much rather be in the action around their guys and on the sidelines. And most of them aren't calling plays these days. They have coordinators who are in the coach's booth who do see a totally different perspective. It's hard for me in games that I didn't play. I'd be watching the offensive line. I couldn't see what they were doing in real time You go to the sidelines, you get those books. And now that's on a Chrome tablet, which can show you those plays. But the perspective is very different. That's why the coordinators are calling it from above. But I think there's space that could be created that would allow for the coaches to still contribute. I just don't think they've created it yet. Not to a level that I would be comfortable with.
It's our DawgNation Happy Hour. It's poured by Classic City Lager. GB2 on YouTube's got a good comment. I want to read that in a moment about what actually is slated to happen on Saturday. First, let me remind you, though, as said before, DawgNation Happy Hour is poured by Classic City Lager. We love getting together and having some fun, talking about football on a Thursday afternoon. By the way, with weather like this, who couldn't enjoy that experience? Weather is also expected to be good on Saturday for the game as well. So many of you settled in for your home gating party, getting ready to settle in and watch some football. No better pairing than our friends at Classic City Lager. It comes from Creature Comforts Brewing Company. It's an Athens original, but you don't have to be in Athens to get it. You can pick it up at whatever retailer you frequent, 6, 12-pack cans. It's available year-round. It's a lager-style beer. That means it's a lighter, tasting, easier drinking beer, but no sacrifice in the flavor. Good, crisp flavor. It's good, cold beer. In fact, you can find out more about Classic City Lager by checking out the hashtag Good Cold Beer and pick up some Classic City Lager wherever you're doing your shopping heading towards this weekend. All right, John, here on the DawgNation Happy Hour, poured by Classic City Lager, GB2 says, I just hope we get this game off. I'm praying for no more COVID news. And there is a sense in which, to me, no news is good news. We're just slated for another round of testing. Alabama is tested on a daily basis. There's some message board rumors those testings have gone well for Alabama as of late. There aren't any positive player tests to add to the Alabama Athletic Director, Greg Byrne. The coach himself, Nick Saban, will continue to follow for more confirmation on all of that. From the Georgia standpoint thus far, it seems like Georgia's navigated all of this, at least the best that we can tell, pretty well. I still get the sense, and I said this morning to start DawgNation Daily, I'm operating on the assumption that this game is going to be played on Saturday, both because what other choice do you really have right now but to assume it's played unless you hear otherwise. And I also get the sense that Alabama is more than willing to play without Nick Saban on Saturday. They maybe should be commended for taking that approach. Maybe other programs might try to find a way to get out of the game. You don't get a sense yet that that's what Alabama wants to do. And obviously, Georgia's still chomping at the bit to play the game. So from that standpoint, I get the sense that both sides are still very interested in playing. Positive tests could make it impossible to do that. But this is not going to be one of those scenarios where I think either team is looking for an excuse not to play, if you know what I'm saying.
Well, as a Georgia fan and somebody who's watched both teams play now, I think chomping at the bit is exactly how Georgia fans should take this. I know, if this game were postponed, it probably would give Georgia's offense a little more time to develop and create that identity, which we've seen kind of the progress and the process through these first 3 weeks. But what a great opportunity. I think that, you look at this Alabama team and their defense just allowed and was a part of the highest scoring game this SEC has ever seen. So what a great time to get them where they haven't truly identified who they are as a defense. So, I'm glad that every party involved is still ready to move forward, because I think that leads to in the favor of Georgia.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Desmond Lee on Facebook says that Bama fans were quick to call off those bets after Saban was sidelined. What Desmond is referencing is at one point in time this week, Georgia was about 6 or so point underdog. I've seen that line at last check drop by at least a field goal down to about a field goal game. It seems like the betting markets are saying that Saban may be worth 3 points in this game to Alabama. This is a very difficult thing to quantify, but I am curious of your opinion about how many points do you think Nick Saban's worth on Saturday? You're a smart guy. You made good grades in school.
Which is, I'm glad of it, because I would lose my tail if I were ever to bet on sports. There's times where as a player you're going, that's a shoe-in win for a team, and then it turns out that it doesn't play out the way you think it should, and that's why we get to play them on Saturdays and Sundays. But I think it does matter. I like Georgia's chances. I don't really care that I'm glad that they're in that underdog point-wise role heading into this game, because I feel more confident about where Georgia's at in this process than where Alabama is. I know they've got the pedigree. I know, Mac Jones is playing at arguably the most elite level of any college football player right now, but he's about to face the best defense in college football. And I'm excited about seeing how that plays out.
PD Wheatstraw on Facebook talking about the potential motivation of Alabama trying to play for an absent coach. I had a chance to address this topic with Barry Jones today, who's very good, former Alabama offensive lineman. He downplayed the notion of the motivational part of all of this, saying that'd be a non-factor on Saturday. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think any player is looking for added motivation. It's the Georgia-Alabama game. It's the number 2 versus number 3 in the country game. You don't need more motivation. If anything, the message is focus. You got to focus on what's important and what your priorities are, because motivation and will to win and desire, that's all, that's taken care of just because of the game itself. You don't need any added motivation.
But can I push back just for a little bit, though? And I don't fundamentally disagree with what you're saying. I just think that, and this is not an insinuation that Alabama planned this or anything like that, but I don't think you want to let a crisis go to waste sometimes. And for Alabama, who had an awful narrative coming off the Ole Miss game, the terrible defense, you even referenced that a moment ago, anything that changes the storyline is better than the notion of, well, Alabama is just kind of a soft team, finesse team. As one of our commenters said this week, kind of an Oklahoma, sort of an Oklahoma Big 12 style version of an SEC team right now. If you can spin a new narrative of, well, now we're playing for our coach, now nobody believes in us because Nick Saban's not here, I can see a scenario where that's at least better than the alternative of being left to pick up the pieces about a defense that's nowhere near as physical as the typical Alabama defense has been. Does that hold any water with you?
No, because it might make you feel better when you go home and you read articles. But at the end of the day, that secondary needs to focus on the fact that their communication stunk and they were leaving players wide open. It doesn't matter that, maybe we're discussing something different than the fact that they just didn't play very well. And nor have they been this threatening, menacing defense that we've come to know every time Alabama shows up on our television screen. So I think for them, it might make them feel better that the conversation has changed, but the importance of what they need to focus on has certainly not. They haven't played well as a defense. There's a lot of stuff that they need to clean up. Just like for Georgia, there's a lot of stuff that they need to clean up. You look at the offensive efficiency. I think there were times in that the Auburn game where you had to get really excited. I mean, there were hats on hats. You're moving people. You're creating seams, which opens up the opportunity to run and give your untested, unverified at this time quarterback an opportunity, and played really well. And against Tennessee, there's not quite that same level of execution, at least not consistently for 60 minutes. So that's where your focus should be. So I think it might make you feel better that the conversation's changed, but I don't think it changes anything about what needs to be done at the facility when they're going to work every day.
Let me address Bill Kelly on Facebook here on a couple of fronts. He says he thinks this is just Alabama's way of avoiding having Nick Saban lose to one of his former assistants. This, John, brings up two things, and I am really curious about your opinion on this. A, I said this on my show this morning, Georgia fans should just say whatever they want to say, because, you can't let Alabama fans define what this game means. In other words, it doesn't count because Nick Saban didn't coach. Says you. If Georgia fans, and I can promise you on DawgNation Daily, we'll absolutely treat this as a head-to-head loss for Nick Saban against Kirby Smart. We'll make no apologies for that. But it does sort of lead into what I have heard from a number of Georgia fans, either commenters in shows like the one I'm reading from right now or just Twitter messages or anything else. There's this sense of this game in which fans have been looking forward to. And I'm kind of putting the team aside here for a moment because, as you said before, their motivation level is completely different. But for fans who had sort of circled this as one of the biggest games that Kirby Smart has played in a regular season thus far, so many things about this game have now been diminished. Its size has seemed to get smaller. Fewer fans will be in the stadium. Nick Saban's now not coaching. The feeling around the Crimson Tide's a little bit different because they've been giving up so many points. And I do think there's a little bit of angst among Georgia fans of, well, if the Dogs do win on Saturday, what does it mean? And by proxy, what are people going to say about us if we win? Are we going to get the full credit that we're supposed to get? I think there's a little bit of anxiety on the part of Georgia fans of maybe not seeing their favorite team get full credit for going to Tuscaloosa and winning. And what I said on my show this morning is, is, John, even if the stadium was full and even if Nick Saban was coaching, Bama fans would still blame it on the refs or shrug it off and say it's not an SEC championship. It's just a regular season game. Then the SEC, none of us really give credit to the other side as much as we probably should. And this game on Saturday with Alabama is no different, even if the circumstances are maybe more specific why Bama fans will say what they say. But if Georgia wins, Alabama fans will find a way to try to explain it away no matter what anyway. At least that's my thought on that.
And I could care less what an Alabama fan has to say. I don't care. I mean,
right.
Yeah, we didn't have our coach. The situation was we didn't have our fans in the stands. We're all dealing with pandemic-related adversity across the board. There's a reason why we're not breaking bread together with the fans, BA. I mean, we're all having to adjust in a new format. So, who was it? Muschamp at the beginning of the season was like, he was asked the question, if a team gets a national championship, should there be an asterisk by their name? And he was like, absolutely. It's one of the toughest teams to ever play the game because they saw their way through such adversity. I would have that same approach as a Georgia fan heading into this game. I don't care if Nick Saban's on the sideline. I was almost glad that Ole Miss didn't win on Saturday against Alabama because I truly think that Georgia has a really good opportunity to be that team that their coach was the first protege of Nick Saban to dethrone the Kings, so to speak. And I'm looking forward to it. I think it's a great opportunity for Georgia, and that's where my focus is. I couldn't care less whether Alabama fans say, yeah, well, here's why it's not as important. Yeah, this is huge. This is a big opportunity, and it's going to be a big win when Georgia does it on Saturday.
Christopher Novotny's got a good comment on Facebook. I want to read that. First of all, let me remind you, though, it's John Stinchcomb there. My name is Brandon Adams. This is our DawgNation Happy Hour. It's poured by Classic City Lager, an Athens original. It's available in 6 and 12-pack cans. You can find it anywhere you do your shopping. Great tasting, lighter lager-style beer. Goes great with beautiful weather and football this weekend. Check out some Classic City Lagers from our friends at Creature Comforts Brewing Company. But you don't have to be in Athens to get it. You can find it anywhere. It's good cold beer. We love, love, love Classic City Lager. All right, here's what Christopher brings up. He says, I can't wait to put Mac Jones in the dirt. And what he means is he likes the idea of the Georgia pass rush getting after Jones on Saturday. And John, that brings to mind something for me. And I think we may have spoken about this before. We're in a day and age now where in 2020, offenses have never been more powerful in the SEC than what they seem to be right now. Georgia's been good, but so many of these other offenses have just been dialing up scores and yards, play after play after play. We've seen very good Georgia defense the last couple of years. When they've met a great offense, the great offense still had some success. LSU a year ago, Alabama in 2018. Think about Oklahoma in 2017, even a game that Georgia won there. Can the Georgia defense, as good as this one seems to be, can it assert itself on the road against an offense like Alabama that's exploding for points as much as it has? Can a great defense win out against a great offense in 2020?
Let me answer your question by saying this: Georgia's offense is going to need to score points. Mm-hmm. I think our defense is elite. I think it's arguably should make a claim for the best defense in college football this year. But Alabama is, they're a good, highly functioning offense. I think we've made great progress as a defense affecting the passer, which was a concern that we had all year long when we were discussing last year's defense. Hey, they're great statistically. They're great against the run. They keep teams out of the end zone. But if there was a weakness, and it reared its ugly head against LSU, is that we weren't very effective getting after the quarterback. And this year, I think we've already checked that box and shown that that's a part of the game that Georgia has added to their repertoire. And it's needed because Mac Jones is that guy. It was Joe Burrow and Baker Mayfield and some of the games that you referenced earlier. Well, this year it's Mac Jones, and he's playing really well, and he's got a lot of talent surrounding him. Najee Harris, and how come they always have 3 wide receivers that are all studs?
Yeah,
He's got guys to throw the ball to constantly. So you're not going to be able to let him sit back there and survey the field and just pick and choose where he wants to distribute the ball, which I think Georgia is set up well for this year, in the fact that they were able to dial up some defenses and some dogs and pressures. And sometimes even when they don't, they can affect the passer just by edge rushing. So, this Alabama offense, not to cut you off, BA, I'm long-winded.
No.
Hey, you pulled my string, so I'm rolling. But
go with it.
The Alabama's going to score points. I don't expect some shutout from this defense, but I do think that Alabama is about to face the toughest defense that they've seen, especially up to this point of the year, but arguably what they'll see all year long. So to answer your question in a short sentence, Georgia's offense is going to have to score points, because as good as our defense is going to play or should play on Saturday, Alabama is a worthy opponent offensively, and they're going to get their shots in as well.
Yeah, I'll put a number on it. I think Georgia needs 30 to win.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I mean, I'm thinking it's hopefully closer to 28. I think you can get 4 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, 2 or 3 field goals in against this defense. I don't think that's a problem. I think our defense, I think if they keep them to 21 points, has done a really good job against a great offense and a great quarterback in Mac Jones.
Bearded Dog on YouTube says that they've been practicing for this game all season. They know what's on the itinerary. They don't, quote, need Saban on the sidelines to win. We already know the excuses will roll in. We talked about that a little bit before. And I guess the first part of what Bearded Dog brings up, to an extent I do believe is true, somebody else in our comment section said these games are won Monday through Friday. I would say that not only is a week of practice leading up to a game important in a game like this, but also those 12 months, or in some cases 24, 36 months prior to this, the roster construction. These games are typically won by the better players. One of the things that has made Nick Saban look like such a brilliant coach is the fact that he's just had better players than most of the programs in the SEC, than almost all the programs in college football. So for that standpoint, for one game, I think it is that in-week preparation stuff that matters. By the way, Barrett Jones, when I spoke to him today, he said don't discount the absence of Nick Saban as kind of a hands-on facilitator during those practices this week is also part of the cost of not having Saban around this game. The fact that he hasn't been able to be as involved in practice the last couple of days, I thought that's interesting. But there's so much that's been done in the years prior and the days prior to contribute to a victory on Saturday. This, to me, truly is more about the kinds of buttons that you push on game day.
Well, I agree. I agree with the sentiment that it's not just Monday through Friday this week that's going to affect the outcome on Saturday. I think another piece that you didn't really hit on, in addition to the preparation and getting the horses ready in the stable, is the games leading up to this one. I think, especially looking at Georgia's offense, you're still trying to create identity and figure out where you want to go with the ball, where you can go with the ball, who you can rely on, which receiver is willing to get his nose a little dirty and block for our running backs when they get the opportunity, which tight ends can we expect to kind of get open, or, what can we do offensively? How are we looking in the screen game? How can we keep this defense on its toes? And I think a lot of that factors into the plays that you call against an Alabama defense, or the plays that you call against an Alabama offense, because of the successes that you've had and some of the learning experiences, shall we call them, in these first few weeks of where you were vulnerable to attack. So it's identifying your strengths and weaknesses in game time, real game time, because there's been a lot of guys that look really good in an off season or really good Monday through Friday, and you get them out there on Saturday and they don't quite perform the way you expect them to. So having that game experience coming in, young guys, veterans, still the same, and building that chemistry and understanding as a play caller, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, what you feel comfortable with, what you think is the right call in certain situations when you're expecting the opponent to, throw a punch in this way. Here's how I want to counter that, or here's how I want to attack it. That's a big role that I think sometimes gets undervalued when you head into opportunities like this one.
Louis McElroy and Noah Sheldon, both in our YouTube comment section, mentioning Mac Jones. I think one of the things that's interesting on Saturday, we haven't heard a ton about this storyline yet, but there's a couple of quarterbacks in this game, neither of which are necessarily supposed to be the guys for their team. there's plenty of belief in Alabama, that Mac Jones would never be the starter. He came in the same year that Tua Tagovailoa did. A lot of folks thought he'd be surpassed this year by another 5-star Bryce Young. Maybe eventually that does happen, but it hasn't happened yet. For Stetson Bennett, he's played at a super high level, even though there was clamoring for, at one point in time, Jamie Newman, and there was JT Daniels. We may still see Daniels, but as of now, we're not quite sure how healthy he is. Dwan Mathis at one point in time had a lot of folks really excited. It's really been Bennett who's provided the big play opportunities for Georgia. I guess one of the things I would remind folks is, and I'm curious where you kind of come down on this, is for the people who are still wondering, can Stetson Bennett be the guy for UGA? The same way that some of our commenters are mentioning Mac Jones. Jones once dealt with some of that at Alabama, and now no one's really asking those questions of him. He's just kind of emerged as the quarterback. I would remind folks that Jones traveling the path he's traveled to be Alabama's unquestioned starter, at least for now. To say that Stetson Bennett is also walking a similar path at Georgia would not be the biggest reach in the world.
No, and I think you can look across the board. Guys develop, guys change as players. You're looking at pieces of clay that coaches mold and experience molds into what you see on game day. Mac Jones is a prime example of somebody who came in with talent and people forget about him. There are players in Georgia's locker room today that we'll write off for the next 5-star high school player that signs his name and you get fired up about, and he may not get that opportunity because here's an example: Warren McClendon is already in campus, and it's going to be Broderick Jones' spot because he's the latest name that we've talked about. Well, guys develop. Stetson Bennett goes off and is playing at a JUCO somewhere for a year and comes back. And during that time, we've added even more players to that position group. So I think that the development of players is sometimes lost, especially on fans that just see, well, if he couldn't beat him out this year, he must not be that good. No, guys are always getting better, or at least the good ones are. The good ones are you taking those opportunities, what we don't see as fans, and are getting better, working on their craft. And, when they do get that opportunity, the ones who are smart are ready to shine. And I think Mac Jones and Stetson Bennett are both examples of guys that were putting in a lot of work when they were under that spotlight, under that limelight. And once they were given that opportunity, you weren't going to take it lightly and try to make the most out of it.
Let's finish with this, if you don't mind. Joseph Kennedy mentioned this on Facebook. He says, it sure would be nice if Jermaine Burton broke out in a big way on Saturday. And along those lines, John, for you, who are those named on either side of the ball?
2 weeks in a row, you're putting me on the spot, which is fine because I'm ready to rip. Okay?
Am I losing my signal here? Is this me? Am I not coming in? Okay, yeah, sorry about that. I didn't know if I lost my signal or not. But we'll quickly finish up with this because I don't know if I'm going to shaky signal or what. Joseph Kennedy brought up Jermaine Burton as a potential breakout guy. Who are your guys on either side of the ball that could be breakout names for Georgia on Saturday as it tries to pull what would still be a little bit of a minor upset against Alabama this upcoming weekend? I'm not sure John's hearing me. All right, so John may not be hearing me. Oh, can you hear me? Are you hearing me okay?
Yeah,
okay,
back
good.
Up and running.
All right, that's good to know. Well, I appreciate that. We're getting ready to wrap up here, so let's see if we can do this. We had a commenter mention Jermaine Burton as a potential breakout name for Saturday. I was just curious before we left here if you had a couple names on either side of the ball that you thought also either you were excited about or maybe need to step up their level of play if Georgia's going to go get that win on the road against Alabama.
Yeah, I'm going to start on the other side of the ball first because I think Azeez Ojulari is a guy that we've talked about, and he's kind of, he's shown up at times, but I think this could be a real breakout game for him. You got Leatherwood over there. You got a really talented offensive line against Alabama. So where's the spotlight turn? It turns to our edge rushers. I think Adam Anderson has shown an ability to get off the ball really quickly and bend the edge. So who's that outside linebacker, that edge rusher that jumps forward? I'm saying Azeez Ojulari has an opportunity to have that marquee game that so many of these pass rushers have that you go, hey, that's when he became a name across the SEC, across the nation that says he's a difference maker. And, as a fan, we've seen those flashes. Well, here's his opportunity. Flip to the other side of the ball. And I don't doubt that it's, Burton. I mean, what an exciting name. We also know of Kyrus Jackson. He seems to be the favorite that Georgia knows, and maybe he's that guy that still jumps out. And George Pickens, man, what about George? He still hadn't had that game where he just takes over. Could this be that opportunity? I know he is expected to, but we haven't seen that yet this year. And man, Saturday will be a great opportunity for him to seize the day.
Well, John, incredible stuff. Thanks for being here with us as part of our DawgNation Happy Hour poured by the Classic City Lager. Hope you enjoy the game this weekend. Hope you continue to stay healthy the way that all of us are trying to right now. And we will certainly look forward to getting a chance to chat with you again very soon.
I hope all Dog fans enjoy the game on Saturday. Go Dogs.
No doubt about that. So wherever you're watching this week, home gating or lucky enough to be on your way to Tuscaloosa, settle in and enjoy. Don't forget Classic City Lager. Always a great choice for your pregame plans on that. Have a great evening. We'll see you back here again next week for DawgNation Happy Hour poured by Classic City Lager. And as John said, hopefully everyone watching right now gets a chance to end Saturday night, late as it will be, with smiles on faces. We'll talk to you soon, everybody.